Awesome. Cool. So we are now live, and we're going to dive into this this training pretty quickly. So it will take a little while for people to kind of jump on, but I think, rather than waste any time, we're just going to dive in. So I'm here with my mate Glenn Smith, my hombre. How are you doing, Glenn?
In Greek. Yeah, all right, man. Thank you. Nice to be here, as always.
Yeah, thank you very much for jumping on, as always, and delivering some gold for the marketeers and guests as well, who potentially may be joining. There's plenty of people signing on. I don't know where you're all watching from. You'll either be watching in the Lifestyle Marketeer group or on my YouTube channel. Glenn's going to take us through some training on objections, right? What objections really mean, why they come up in your calls, how you can overcome them, and ultimately use this training to land more deals, close more clients, make more money. Now, before we dive into that, I just want to say, especially to the marketeers, apologies. I've been ill for a couple of weeks. You can probably still just about hear it in my voice. Coming through the other side of it, don't know what it was, but anyway, we're all here. We're all good, feeling better. Started training again, back on with the live event. So apologies for the setback and the delay there. Please do drop us comments below. Let us know who's watching. Say hey. Feel free to ask any questions as we go through it. And without further ado, Glenn, take us through some awesome sales goodness, please, my friend.
All right, nice. So hey everyone, good to be here. And as James said, what we're going to do is dive into some objection handling mastery training. Predominantly in this case, what we're going to be talking about is the mentality towards objection handling and the approach to it, as opposed to which, the kind of stuff that people are all too reliant on, like what line should I use to say to this objection, and what line can I use to give me like 100% chance of turning this objection around. Really, there are no canned lines that are going to do that for you. So what's most important is that you understand objections, as and what they represent, why they, manifest in people anyway, why they come out, what's going on behind it. And that ultimately gives you a far better opportunity and lateral way of thinking to approach overcoming it, rather than thinking, oh, let me scroll down my list and see if I can find the answer to this objection. All right, so James, the screen share is all working, right? If I start sharing now. Good man. Okay, cool. So let's get into it. Hopefully a few of you are tuning in. James is going to keep an eye on that, because what I'm going to do is just make sure that we're getting the good stuff in. And if we can get some interaction throughout this as well, I want to just check in a few times, and maybe James, you'll help me with that to make sure that we're getting some takeaways or some people, because talking at a camera for 40 minutes.
One second, man. Just before you dive into that, do you want to just give, for anybody who isn't familiar with you and who isn't familiar with even me or who isn't really a client, guest particularly, just give us a very quick intro and background to you, man. Like, who are you? What are you doing here? And yeah, just
of course.
Quickly, please, man.
Absolutely. Okay, so without going too long into it, 2018 September was when I enrolled in the Lifestyle Marketeer program as a student myself. Having been working in sales and traveling a lot for the kind of 9 to 10 years prior to that, the program helped me quit my job teaching English and shift online pretty quickly. And within 4 months, I was, I'd almost tripled my teaching salary, and I was off living in Hoi An in Vietnam, where they've got like one school, so not really much demand for teachers. And anyway, as a result of that, with my background in sales, I found that I was more frequently able to help people in the community with the salesmanship side of things. I began working with James directly in December 2018, and spent nigh on 2 years, right, James, working closely with you, heading up the transformation coach team, enabling people to take the step. Was responsible for more than £1 million in sales myself, and the team beneath me more so, and involved in hiring and training the team, the transformation coaches as well, and enabling you guys, I think more than 650 students at the point that that we kind of parted ways, James, like a few months ago, about 650 students. So I've helped to sell their services and excel, and more than 20 of those in a one-to-one basis in the mastermind. So yeah, I've probably taken 2,500 to 3,000 calls in my life, I want to say, arguably more, and closed 5 to 10 million in revenue. And that experience is now what I'm helping people use to close more deals, double, triple, and more recently, you know, in the case of Sophie, 9x their conversion in 4 weeks. So that's
nice
just all right, man. Cheers. That's just not to brag, just an example of why you might want to tune in and listen in, and
why you might want to listen. Yeah, layers of gold, man, because a lot of that's to do with your uncanny ability to identify and handle objections, right? So tell us how.
It is. Yeah, okay, let's get into that then. So let me get back on the screen share. Let me know that it's working. Oh, hang on. Yeah.
Sorted.
Cool.
Yeah, all good.
Okay, man. So we're going to cover objection handling. This is actually a sneak peek. It's just an entirely freakishly generous giveaway on my part, because this is the opening module in the in my program, Sales Breakthrough Academy. Okay, and I'm just going to give it to you guys today in its entirety. So understanding and handling objections comes at the root of everything. That's what we're going to cover before we even dream about going into what you should or shouldn't say. So we're going to cover here what objections represent in the person that's, you know, that's bringing objections forward. The reasons that we get objections, and the only reasons, despite what, you know, many misconceptions might tell us. The main objections we get, as far as, you know, categorizing them and knowing what we can do to deal with them, because that's also important. Understand what the objection really is, and then essentials for handling your objections. And again, this is going to touch more so on things about yourself, a lot of the unspoken stuff, okay, and mindset. And then I may or may not give you some homework off the back of it. So yeah, let's get into it. So part one, what objections represent. They're limiting beliefs, and we'll go into what this exactly means. You'll be all too familiar with this yourself. Limiting beliefs is a terminology used quite a lot, and we're all faced with it. Things that tell us to act in certain ways that ultimately limit our progress. And this can be the case with our clients, prospective clients too. All right, so our job is to rewire their thinking so that they no longer buy into that limiting belief, because that's their own job. Everybody wants to buy into their own limitations. It's our job and our ability not to do that that enables us to get them to take steps forward. Okay. So what objections represent? They, like I said, they're limiting beliefs, and they stop people from being able to take a course of action that serves them. Even if they feel like they know it serves them, it stops them being able to do that. And that's, I mean, that's a wholly crippling thing as well for many people. Sometimes they just can't look past it. And if it becomes very clear during the call that this course of action is better for them, which is our job to make sure we do that over the course of the whole call, and not just thinking we can bomb through, follow a script loosely, not really pay any attention, not really pay the person any attention, ask canned questions and such things like that, and then get through to the end and just have something that we can use to overcome their objections. You know, that's not going to work. So our job is to make it very clear that the course of action is better for them, right? And instill certainty in that. And we know it's better for them as well. And it's our job then to help them shift their, not just their thinking, but their actions to back that up and take that step. All right. So that's what we're looking to do. Almost all of these belief patterns, these limiting ones that people have, they kind of follow this framework. And this isn't something that I've come up with myself. It's something that was taken from a mentor. And it's this if X, then Y type pattern. And some examples here that people kind of have in their minds that stop them being able to move forward might be to do with permission or consent of a spouse or a partner, right? So they might think, if I do this without asking my wife, hence, you know, the I do this without asking my wife part being the X, then she'll be pissed off being the Y, right? Which would mean ultimately that they don't feel able to take action. What would our job be? To make them see that either A, she won't be pissed off, or B, that dealing with the fact that she'll be pissed off is still less consequential and better off, and she'll come to learn the benefits of it in time, than carrying on and not taking action. All right, so that's how you're looking to rewire their thinking. Other examples, if I do this on my own, I'll save money, right? So they might want to continue to try and do boosted posts on Facebook or Instagram, something like that. They'll save money, even though they stand to make basically no money off the back of it, and it doesn't work for them. You know, it's a limiting belief. It explains itself, like, in its entirety. They're almost irrational. Again, if I use my house savings, for example, people have got money in, I don't know, 401ks, ISAs, where they're putting money away, or they've inherited some money. And if I use that money, I'm an idiot, or I'm irresponsible. That kind of thing can be a really limiting thing, even though that money sat there in the bank, designated for a purpose that's not even going to materialize for probably the next 5 years. They still feel it's better off sat there because it's not to be touched, even though it might enable them to create an asset and give them the ability to generate far more than the cost of taking that out is, and replace it and add to it 5-10 times over, right? So again, these are things that people feel inside them. You can't just be guilty of thinking, this person's so, stupid. How can they think that way? You've all got your own limiting beliefs. I've got mine. James has got his. We've all got these things that are inside our brains that stop us sometimes from being able to do things that we know serve us. And we might come to learn in time, and we do it a bit late, and we're like, why was I waiting that long? Limiting beliefs, right? So with all of this in mind, if one thing is going to come across clearly, it's not to be judgmental of your prospects, but to understand why they object, why these things manifest. And another final one, if it costs more than X per month, it's too expensive, right? So they come in with an idea, okay, well, I don't know, marketing should cost me £500 a month, or £400 a month, or £250 a month. If it's more than that, it's too expensive. So again, we've got duties here as leaders, which is what we are. This is annoying because that's in the way. Can I move that? No. Let's switch across to the slides. Hopefully we can see. Just bear with me a sec. Okay, cool. So we've got a duty here as leaders to help change these beliefs in people. All right. We want to lead them to a conclusion that actually serves them, an action that follows as such. And we do that highlighting the cost of the alternative routes in actions, right? So if you're familiar with my selling system and the free training that I've offered you guys previously, if you haven't, you can get across to the group, find the relevant post. I can sort you out there and get that copy to you. And it was also a live training that I did with James previously. So the cost of action has to seemingly be far less consequential than the cost of inaction. Okay, if they carry on the trajectory that they're on with these limiting beliefs and acting as such, where does it leave them versus where does it leave them if they actually overcome that and take a step to get past it? Okay, so that is what objections represent, limiting beliefs. These objections, okay? And this is the reason what we're saying here really is what fuels the limiting beliefs, or, what fuels... oh, by the way, true objections, anything but real financial ones, because if someone doesn't have it, we fall into a different category. It's a logistical objection. You can't get past it sometimes anyway. That's the only exception to this rule, that they are limiting beliefs. So we've got logistics being one reason that we get objections. Another one, breakdown in the body of your call. So we haven't ironed out the limiting beliefs. Conditioning, you know, why, again, how these limiting beliefs have ended up in people, why they act a certain way now. It's that whole nature nurture thing, right? Nurture's powerful. All of the experiences that they've had prior to having this conversation with us, with all types of different kind of salespeople, marketers, anybody that's trying to offer them a product or service, can lead to them now behaving in a certain way because they've been conditioned as such. And they just be unclosable as well. So logistical things, we've got two types there. Ones that we can't get past, which means they're unclosable, and ones that we can get past, which we can handle with them. Like helping them figure out the money themselves, taking a deposit close if they're going on holiday for 3 weeks and they say they can't get started. That would be a logistical objection. All right, so let's take a closer look at these. Some examples of them. Logistical objections. So this is when someone has imminent plans to take a trip, for example, right? Or money doesn't land in their accounts until a few weeks' time. Let's say they're awaiting invoices, right? So I've got a couple of invoices outstanding, you know, another 2K due within the next few weeks. I can't make this work. You know, that again, that's a logistical objection. And we want to be sure, we can do this in various ways to make sure that that is truly the objection. There's not uncertainty lying underneath it. But if that's the case and they're bought into the process, you know, and they want what you're offering, these logistical objections are absolutely the best ones that you can have. They're great. I mean, it's like, you know, because it's nothing to do with intent, the psychology of stopping them. It's purely just logistics, and they think that they can't overcome that. We can just help devise a plan or work around it so that they take a step that serves them. Another reason we get objections is breakdown in the body of your call. Okay, so it's all too often the case and they say, oh yeah, I tried with the script, you know, but like people just weren't responding, and I felt like I was getting closed doors and the barrier up, and you know, the conversations got kind of difficult, and I get that. And that's ultimately, that's another thing entirely. That's misuse of a script and not executing it well. So, you know, relying on the questions on the screen, not listening to the person, being in tune with them and actually responding accordingly. You know, that can be one thing. But when we dismiss the script entirely, sometimes as a result of that, or other times because we think, oh, I don't want to sound like a salesperson, we don't take people through the necessary steps, okay? In order to help reframe their thinking, which is really key to get to the end of that call, having ironed out potential objections because we've been through the necessary steps in the sales script, which is to make someone establish, you know, understand and digest the true kind of extent of the problem, how it impacts them, how it stands to continuing, who else it impacts, you know, the consequences are of that continuing, and what the payoff is of fixing this thing, right? And ultimately feeling like A, they trust you, B, they feel like you might have the solution to be able to help them. That's really where we need to be. And that all comes from following the script, executing it well. So they're all there to help us highlight, like we said, the cost of inaction for the person and reframe limiting beliefs over the course of the call. So if you're already kind of in a place where you're just, and like I said, this can be various things. It cannot come across authentically. It doesn't mean it shouldn't be done. It just means there are tweaks there to be made to make it work for you. And again, all sort of stuff that I can help you with. So as far as the impact of missing out sections of your script, we can almost tie it down to like 80% of the 5 times. The things that you neglect in the script, like the areas that you neglect, they're there to address certain objections and to iron out certain limiting beliefs. So when they're not addressed, that objection will typically arise. Because it's like, well, it hasn't been talked about. We haven't reframed their thinking on it. Why would we expect them to think any other way than the way that they already did if we haven't taken the necessary steps to address and iron out those potential objections before they come at the end of the call? All right. So this is what they're there for. Don't give yourself like a disadvantage straight out of the gates and neglect parts of your script, because they are there to serve you, to reduce the number of objections that you get at the end as well, because that's ultimately what we're looking for, right? No objections. And that's, I don't know, I want to say like 1 in 30 calls, 1 in 20, you might get that. Or maybe 1 in 100. It's more likely to be 1 in, I think, 50 if you look at the stats. Like with 1% of people being ready to kind of like pull the trigger now, they're just looking to pay someone to get this fixed. 4% of people in your market being pretty ready, you know, and let's say half of those people that are pretty ready are convinced by you at best. 2 or 3 out of 100, 1 in 50, you might get someone just go, okay, let's do it now, I'm in. You know, that's a great feeling. But if you're listening to this, you're probably all too aware that that's not really often the case. So far we've covered logistics, breakdown in the body of your call, and now another thing, conditioning here. So like we've said, this is the kind of the nurture element. They might have been sold to, you know, a million times like we all have. They might have a conditioned response to being sold to as a result of that, because, you know, it's like self-protection, it's self-preservation. So it can just be this thing that naturally comes out, even though a different part of the brain is saying you really should do this. They've got a conditioned response to it and almost are acting on autopilot. And we've also got legitimacy to this, you know, because a lot of people do leave a pretty awful impression on their prospects when they're trying to sell them stuff. They can be really pushy, confrontational, fall into this kind of combative, high pressure situation at the end that's always going to leave people with a sour taste, and ultimately either make it very easy for the next person that speaks to them, because that person's like, you know, not a confrontational, judgmental, kind of non-present dick. And they love that person and they spend their money with them. Or it can make it really difficult, because regardless of who it is in front of them, they're still tainted by the person, you know, that they were speaking to previously. And if they haven't been hurt in, you know, in a sense, you know, and felt real, like a point, a specific consequence as a result of following this pattern for the last 5 years, like just finding out, information gathering, and then buying, although things have been kind of terminally and chronically bad in their business or not where they want to be, there's been no bam, oh, I got scammed, or bam, oh, I got ripped off, or bam, you know, this happened and it really hurt me. Because there are no like key incidents like this, they start to like reinforce that behavior and think that that's the one that serves them best. So conditioning is a part of all of us, right? It's what we do. So again, we just need to be aware that even when people use objections, sometimes it's just autopilot to back out, to protect themselves and stay behind the safety. We use that in inverted commas because we know on the other side of the coin, there's the ability to change their situation of inaction. All right. And then finally, this is a simple one, they're unclosable, right? So, you know, would have, wouldn't. So let's say they wouldn't have the money or any other resource to make it happen. That could be credit, that could be money in a house savings account. That could be a generous family, supportive family, someone that knows that, you know, they're good to pay them back or whatever. Those kind of things are all resources that people can tap into. If they don't have those, you know, and they've got poor credit alongside it, no ability to borrow, no cash, well, they're not going to be able to spend any money, are they? So they just fall into the ones that we can't close, and we have to accept that. I just want to check in for a bit of a, is it making sense? Because this is like I've said, it's a lot of philosophy and the mentality behind it. So anybody coming in thinking, oh, Glenn's going to tell me, you know, kind of 25 variations of lines that I can use to help people come past their objections. No, what this is about is you understanding what's at the root of it all, so that you can act accordingly, you know, very humanly, and be able to deal with them in a way that suits. So is this making sense, James? Have we got any engagement of any kind? Any takeaways so far? Any realizations of guiltiness?
There's a question that's been submitted by MD, whoever MD is,
Okay.
mystical MD.
No.
We're going to go ahead and answer the question anyway. It's relevant to what you're talking about, but it's not specific to objection handling. So the question is, what would you consider a good closing percentage on clients from a sales call to having them sign up for your services? So I think, first of all, to answer that question, you need to understand where are your leads coming from, because depending on, you know, how warm or how hot somebody is coming into a conversation to talk to you is going to vary your close rate massively. So let's divide that question up into daily outreach, cold prospecting. What typically would you call is a good close rate for cold prospects coming into their first interaction with you through like cold daily outreach prospecting?
This is the thing, it's subjective, right? So we have to judge ourselves by our own standards, and as such, mine right now are very high, and those of my clients that I get the opportunity to work with also then become quite high. But at the same time, you know, it is subjective. So if you're somebody who can quite happily and ably book a call a day, you know, for every day, working day of the week, and take 20 calls, but land one, let's say £1,200 a month retainer at 3 months off the back of that, your conversion's 5%, which on the surface of things, if you compared it with, you know, if you asked the salesperson as far as a KPI, they'd say, well, you know, ultimately that's awful. But it's subjective, because if you're happy to do it, and if 20 hours of sales calls is worth then landing a £3,600 deal, and you're doing that every month, it means that in every month in the year, you've got 3 clients overlapping at any one time. Because if it's September now, I just had this conversation with someone, if you took someone on in July, you've still got their last month's payment in September. The person that you took on in August, you're also getting paid for, and the person that you took on in September, which means you're making 3.6 grand British a month. So MD, although I'd like to give you a number, and for me, you know, I typically close at 30 to 45%, that's let's say 25, allowing for blips, from relatively cold to warmish traffic. If the traffic gets a bit hotter, I expect to close more than 50, but that's just because of experience. And, you know, we all need to look at our own goals, look what we want to get off the back of it, and then reverse engineer the numbers. So, you know, for many people, 5% is going to be a happy close rate. But if you just tweak that a little bit and that turns into 10%, and you can land 2 of those 1.2K or even £800 deals a month, all of a sudden your income starts to grow to kind of 60 to, you know, 60K a year plus. So don't get too caught up on the percentage and what you should or shouldn't be doing. We want to be striving, you know, for higher numbers, of course, because it feels good. But really, just have a look at what's off the back of what you want, off the back of it. Really, that's it. So, am I with you, James? I noticed you sent me a picture that your Wi-Fi has died, which means I might be still live. I don't know. I may not be. So I'm just going to stay here and hang around. People, if you're with me, check in. James is messaging me. Stop sharing that. Right. Not quite sure yet. Let me check in the group. Oh, cool. Okay, it seems that I'm still live. I'm just going to check in for a bit of... I should see myself surely in here. Where's the... There it is. Yeah, still live. Seconds. Oh, 29. Yeah, seconds are ticking by. Okay, cool. All right, well, I'll carry on then. So let's get back on screen share. So MD, hope that answers your question. Mate, don't get too caught up on the numbers. If you want mine specifically, it's anywhere from 25 to 50% plus. Okay, screen sharing, back on track. Okay, so back to it. We've got about 15 minutes left, so I'm gonna have to whiz through a little bit now. The main objections that we get, these fall into 3 categories. We've got uncertainty. Now, this is basically a lack of belief that the cost of inaction, i.e. not moving forward and taking action to fix this situation, the cost is greater than the cost of action, or riskier, or more consequential to them. And if they have that belief, why would they possibly take another course of action when they feel that they don't feel certain that it pays off for them? So it could be time, that they know that there's going to be a lot of time spent and it may not be worthwhile. Could be emotionally, they end up worse off. Could be financially. It's whatever ultimately drives them, and you should know this in the conversation that you're having with your prospects. 2 secs. Wait there a second. Come on. Just checking that. Yeah, okay, we definitely are. I just don't want to talk at myself for the next however long. I'm no longer with you lot. So we are still here, back on this screen share. Forgive the interruption, everyone. We'll get through this. Okay, so there needs to be certainty in their mind that the course of action pays off for them. And when there's not, it's an uncertainty-based objection, right? And at a stage when you're still perfecting your approach to sales, which is going to count for a lot of you listening to this, okay, unless you've got experience and background in sales, the execution of your calls is still coming up to scratch, which is perfectly normal. That's things that have to happen. It's an organic process, but these objections are going to make up about 90% of the objections that you actually get. So regardless of whether or not people are using money, using support and those kind of objections as smoke screens, ultimately 9 in 10 times when we're still kind of novice selling, we're making errors in the point leading flows that result in 9 out of 10 people having an uncertainty there that we need to overcome. So I want you to become a little bit more cynical with knowing this, knowing what's going on underneath and knowing how people actually think and what's limiting them. And knowing that a large portion of people are just uncertain and support as smoke screens. I want you to become a little bit more skeptical of their initial response and be a bit more of as to what you actually take on board and believe, because cynicism's never going to really hurt you as long as it doesn't manifest in behavior that where you turn into a dick and you start acting like confronting people saying, well, I think there's something else going on here. There are ways that we deal with it, but first of all, knowing that there's typically something underneath is the first step. All right, and when you start to nail down your execution of your calls throughout, it will become less common. And more often you're probably going to flip the stats to about 80-90% of calls will only be logistical kind of objections, whereby it's money or support before they can actually move forward. And the uncertainty again revolves around your ability to solve their problem. All right.
Sorry,
hey, you're back.
The power cut at my house, so I've just had to connect to my phone hotspot, so I don't know how good my connection is. So if anything goes wrong with that connection, just crack on.
Cool. Right. Well, I checked in that the timer was still running and everything on the group, and it seems that I'm still going strong, so I just carried on.
Yeah, except your screen share wasn't working, but it is now.
Cool. Okay. All right. So in those periods where the screen wasn't sharing, people, hopefully you got pen and paper handy, taking notes anyway. We're not going to go back over those. So second group of objections you'll get are money. All right. So a true financial objection, as opposed to one that's a smokescreen for uncertainty, is a logistical one. All right. They do want to, but money appears to limit their ability to proceed. This is a financial objection. So in this case, they either need leading to a solution to actually see. Now, what's important is this word here appears. This is the operative word here. Because again, right, limitations, people already buy into their own. Everybody's guilty of doing it. It's when people step up, leaders and authority figures, to not buy into those limitations that people start to be able to look past them and act differently and work around them. So even though money appears to be a problem, sometimes they just need leading to a solution or a way of thinking where you handle the objections with them. And actually we ascertain that they can do it, you know, or reframe their beliefs to make them realize that this is good allocation of the money, and it's worth borrowing maybe, and they hadn't really thought about borrowing. Or the other kind of objection financially is they're unclosable. So they've got no money, they've got no credit, they've got no support, or they just don't have enough of all of these things to be able to pay for your services. And we can identify that earlier in the call. Like I said, ideally in majority of cases, we want to be able to be identifying this and saving ourselves time. That's just reference to other trainings for the, like I said, this comes from the program itself with my academy lot. So that would link out to another kind of training. So there are ways that you can deal with that and ascertain that people don't have the money in a way that doesn't, you know, accidentally cut off your own opportunities, and wrap up a call and save yourself some time and energy, and them that too. And also wording here. So getting back to your money objections, the wording is key. So, you know, it's too expensive typically isn't a money objection, right? It's not a logistical money objection. It's usually something else. It's certainty. It's like it could be done, but the perceived consequence of doing it seems worse off to them than the payoff of actually doing it. Okay, and that's where it's important to be aware of the, you know, the demeanor of the person, their body language, but also the words that are coming out of the mouth. What does it show you about really the way they're thinking? And is it money, you know, or are we guilty of saying, oh, they couldn't afford it, they didn't have the money anyway, so that wasn't really a fit? You know, I hear that all too often, people saying, oh, they weren't really a fit, they didn't have the money. But the objection is something like this: it's too expensive, or that's a lot of money, or those kind of things. You know, they didn't have the money for my services. And that can make us feel better. It puts us on this kind of pedestal, or they didn't have the money to be investing in my services, or the mentality. So that's, you know, logistical objection. But actually it's not, because it means you haven't done your job in making them aware and certain that there's a payoff that far outweighs the destination they're facing if they don't take any action, right? And that's why it seems expensive to them. And then the last third of the three big objections that we get, the big three, business partner or spouse, right? And this is basically that they either need to inform their partner out of just courtesy and respect. It's just their way of doing things. It's the dynamic in their relationship. It's detrimental to their relationship if they don't, that kind of thing. This is the way people feel, or they need to get their consent, you know, and they couldn't move forward. And especially if it was a business partner, might be dual signatories on anything where finances leave the bank account, so they couldn't do it if they wanted to. You know, you don't want to kind of be pressurizing someone who needs a dual signature, you know, signature to release funds, because you're just going to sound silly. Like, it's a logistical limitation. Or the consent of their spouse. They hold the purse strings, you know, they're in charge of the relationship. It's not all that uncommon, right? Especially on the side of the women being in charge of the relationships. So part 3, objections, handling essentials. Okay, so first one of these is certainty. You need to have this in yourself and in their objection, right? So knowing what their objection really is. And that goes back to what we just talked about here. Is it an underlying uncertainty with a smoke screen, money or support objection? We want to get certain on the objection itself. Tone and pace of yourself is important, the way you're speaking, using your intel that you've gathered in the call, right? So there's no point having a poorly executed call where you don't find out anything really of any importance about their situation, to truly understand them, to see if you can help, to then be able to refer back to it and use it in a way to help that person realize that, you know, that they can take this step, or this step does serve them because they told you X, Y, Z. And if that carries on, then X, Y, Z. We don't get to do that if we don't have any intel, right? So that's getting and using your intel, really. And then being person-centered. Okay, not being outcome-centered I want to close another deal centered. This person's just someone in front of me that either says yes to getting the credit card out or no to getting the credit card out centered, but instead being actually person centered and thinking about the individual in front of you and understanding them. All right, that's really key. And this is why I tend to be good at objection handling, because ultimately I care about the person in front of me. I care a selfish ass. So that's going to help you as well. And we'll just break these down and then we're going to be done, which is good timing. 5 minutes left. So certainty in both ourselves and in their objection, right? So like we say, we need to be rooted in confidence that this is the best move for them, right? So in ourselves, have our own limiting beliefs pre-call. We can iron these out. We can do things in our daily routine. We can check in, even if we don't have results. You know, if you're relatively new, you still haven't got your FPT running, or you can check in on other people's results to get that confidence and check, you know, search the group for testimonial. Just realign yourself with what it is that you're learning to do and the effectiveness of these tools to, again, get yourself more deep rooted in certainty that this is something that can help people. And then in understanding the person in front of you, make sure that you're sure that this is something that pays off for them. That's going to help you so much, because when objections come up, you're unfazed, because ultimately we still know that this is the best destination for them to go. Hopefully we've done our work up until that point to make them as well. And like I said, in your daily routine, daily affirmations is a good thing to be doing. A lot of people might kind of dismiss this as wishy-washy. I know a lot of you won't as well. Will understand the importance of this, but just saying things out loud about the, you know, the things that you believe, or the in again, will instill it into you and start to put you in a position whereby it just comes naturally to feel that's who you are, and you know, thinking anything differently would require someone to reframe your thinking. So you've come to the point now where you are certain in what you do feel great about it, you are someone who knows their value, and you can do that just by putting sticky notes on the taps. You know, taps are important things in your day-to-day life. So every time you go to the tap, you see your sticky note, you say the affirmation out loud. You know, I'm incredibly valuable to my clients and the systems that I use are highly effective. Bam. Say that enough times throughout the day. Every time you go to the tap, it's going to get in your mind. If you're convinced it's not the right thing for them, on the flip side of this, then you shouldn't be making an offer anyway. All right. So there's no objection to be handled. That's if you're convinced it's not if you're not convinced that it is, right? Because sometimes that can be your own limiting belief stopping you. And that's what we don't want to buy into, because, oh, I don't have any results yet or anything. Well, you know, truth is, there's no difference really between taking on a final product test person like client and working for them on a cost only basis and charging someone. And let's just say that in the event that your worst fears did come true and your limiting beliefs were founded, and actually the campaign went to absolute, you know, horse poo and it was rubbish. Like, if you're that compelled to, and you know, you're ethically aligned and you want to just make sure that that ends on the right terms, refund them if you want. And then there's no difference to that person's position between if they, you know, oh, they come in on the understanding that I've never done this before, and ultimately that's, you know, I feel better about that. But if you charge them and you're rooted in confidence and then it does go wrong, you want to refund them, they're no worse off anyway. So stop having this limitation in your own mind that you can't sell something until you've got absolute perfect results. You don't need that. And I think, you know, Charlotte, one of your coaches as well, will attest to that, because she got her FPT, and before she'd even delivered the FPT, she'd landed another couple of clients straight selling. And guess what? They didn't care whether she had results or not, because she instilled confidence in them, because she followed the right steps. All right. You also then need to be sure, off the back of your own certainty here, which is great, enables you to be the oak tree in the blustery day while everyone else is, and their mind's going frantic, and you're nice and sat in certainty. You're then going to isolate the true objection. Okay, so we want to make sure that you're handling the right objection, because handling the wrong objection is useless to everyone. Doesn't serve anyone. you know, and your tone and pace. This is important because it reflects things in the way that you're feeling, and people can then read that and then they'll interpret it in different ways, and they might be ways that damage you. So the key here is just to be consistent from the off. Like, be the person in the beginning of the call that you also know you want or need to be at the end, which is someone who's chill, rooted in certainty, isn't speaking fast, isn't getting overly excited, is just like the oak tree. And if you're that person from the beginning and you take leadership and you're authoritative and you're confident, then you don't have to shift demeanors in the end, okay? Because changes in your tone and pace, they show emotional changes in you, like really clear. If you're talking faster, can be perceived as excitement. So they're like, oh, here we go, going into the sale now, going into salesperson mode. Nervousness, you know, so, okay, this guy's got a lack of certainty, he's talking fast now, and, you know, asking the question 3 times because he's not sure of himself, and, you know, always desperate for business. And that's never a perception we want, right? We want to take this fly on the wall perspective. If someone's watching this call, are they looking at you or the prospect and saying this person needs the other person more? How does the dynamic look? Because it should be the prospect looking like they need you more than you need them. Showing impatience or annoyance as well. You know, this can, again, your tone screams this stuff out loud, so it doesn't matter what you're saying. And if you don't expect objections, which is kind of like arguably daft behavior, right? If you don't expect objections when we know they come in 49 out of 50 calls, like, you're not expecting them, and then the person says no because you've got it in your head that they were just going to say yes, and then your tone changes. That starts to make people think you've got like a surly side. We don't want that. Yeah, and like I said, our animal is, and they can undo it really quickly. All right, we are still animals at the end of the day, and if you think your prospective clients things and fix it, and to make sure that they're clear, well, then who are you helping? The reason might be that you haven't got any intel because the call, you know, you haven't kind of followed the tour, made sure you are, again, all things that we can look to perfect. So yeah, and also use it, like I say, referencing it. This is accountability and leadership, right? Well, you told me that if nothing changes, you're set to be in a position whereby it's pretty bleak. You know, they've told you what it would mean going back to the 9 to 5. They don't, which means they're out of the house 11 hours a day because of the commute, and they don't get to see the kid in the evening, have to stop their business because it wasn't profitable, whatever that might be, right? Holding them accountable to it, and also showing leadership that you care more about the results than just getting business. And that relates here to being person-centered as well. So, you know, the business owner in front of you is a person, as are you. Consider it when you're holding them accountable using your intel. Don't focus just on the superficial things like, you know, oh, like you said, you know, if you don't make an extra grand, you're never going to be able to upgrade and get your living room done or whatever. You know, think more about what drives this person. You know, their identity. Who do they want to be seen as? Have they talked a lot about themselves and what, you know, what they want to do and why they want to do it? You know, are you asking those questions? Like, what drives them? Their purpose. Who do they feel like they're, you know, dutiful to? Who have they got like an obligation to serve, or what causes or what people? Who would be let down if they don't fix this problem? All right. So this is the purpose and identity, you know, and examples of the purpose. It might be giving their kids opportunity. sending them to the right schools, giving them the right extracurricular activities and practice. It might be spending more quality time at home with their spouse. It might be their parents. They need to get back and see them more often if they're, you know, in a different country, but money doesn't allow it. Whatever. Identity, you know, do they want to be an industry leader? Do they want to be a household provider, which can tie in with purpose? Do they want to be someone who lets their decisions be governed by fear? Okay, so this is an example of how you kind of use the identity that someone or and say, ultimately, you know, who do you want to show up as? Is it that person like that enables their decisions to be governed by fear and sits on the other side of the fence and as such continues on a path that doesn't serve them? Or, you know, like those people who do get things that are worthwhile, like love, like children, like good investments, like business. Do you want to be someone who's willing to step outside of their comfort zone and realize those things? You know, that's far more powerful. All of these things and talking about this is far more powerful than just focusing on superficial things. All right, so have a think about how in tune you are with the person in front of you. Are you present? Are you listening? Or are you just reading questions? Do you even understand them at the end of the call, what they really want to achieve and where they don't want to be? And if you don't get to the end of the call feeling that, you know, you're kind of doing things wrong off the bat, and all of this stuff's not really going to help you. So start by being person-centered. You can flip this whole thing in reverse. Start with that. Listen, understand, and then use it in conversation and help them understand that, you know, inaction is more consequential than action. James, I can hear you tuning in, mate. I know I've run over a little bit, so I appreciate you bearing with me for 5 minutes.
Solid, man. No, you're all right. Gold. There's a question that I think we should cover.
Cool.
From Ed. Pardon me. With regards to using your intel, do you mean we should try to gather information early in the call that could be used later in the call to argue against their reasons for rejection?
Cool. Let me just touch on a couple of things, and I'm not being pedantic, Ed, but the thing is, with the way we write things down or the way we say things ourselves can sometimes represent the way we actually approach our calls. We don't want to be arguing anything, but rather leading and helping them see, you know, the truth, let's say, and the benefits and consequences. But to take it back, the answer is absolutely yes. And that's why you have a script whereby you understand what's really going on and what if nothing changes and what if something does change. You know, the only reason that we take through, well, we do that for two reasons: to help people see as best we can the true extent of the problem and realize it, to want to change it, to move forward. But then we're in those situations where that's still not enough, so that we can then remind them of it and help them, you know, and hold them accountable to, like, and align them with that version of themselves that was honest and was open and realized the extent of the consequences if they don't change, versus the one who instead, because we're at a situation now at the end of the call where there's an inevitable cost of action, which is paying some money or putting some time and energy in, you know, or adding an extra half an hour or an hour to their day of study to get a few things down pat that they need to do in their own business, like they all of a sudden shrink into this fearful state. And we just want to realign them with the person that was honest and clear and was, you know, just the kind of the best version of themselves, rather than the one that's governed by fear. So that's the only reason we do that. Yeah. But don't, you know, try not to go into it with the mentality of, I'm doing this so I can overcome their objections. Yeah, you are, but you're doing it in the first place. Your information gathering section of your call, which it's aptly labeled because that's pains and desires and everything therein, is to make you understand the person so that you can actually tailor an offer. And the way that you even present your offer should reflect what they've said, you know, and then handling the rejections is just a byproduct if it's needed, which, you know, in most cases it is. So try to think of it. Yeah.
Definitely don't go into it with the perspective of arguing anything, either for or against. I think is the overriding consensus, right?
Yeah.
It's like you're not there to argue anybody anything. You're not there to make people do what they don't want to do. You're here to essentially remind them in objection handling politely what they've, you know, spent the last hour telling you is the problem, and what's going to happen. Again, the coin selling system, the cost of inaction, what's going to happen if they choose not to proceed and work with you and overcome the problem that they've got, that you can help them overcome. So Kate, and I think a lot of it comes down to, and I say this quite a lot, but like your identity and your energy on the call, your tone, your energy on the call, like you've touched on, Glenn, in your slides there. How you say things screams a lot more than what you're actually saying, right? And I think just being, you know, the calm energy at the end to remind somebody of what they've said throughout, I think that's more your standpoint as opposed to any form of confrontation, right?
Absolutely, yeah. It doesn't want to be combative ever.
That's the one. All good, cool. Wrapping up for today.
Yeah, cool, absolutely.
Man, appreciate you jumping on and sharing your wisdom with the marketeers. Have you got somewhere where anybody can check some more stuff out if they want to get some more free goals from you?
Yeah, absolutely. So plenty of free gold and various free trainings available across in Sales Breakthrough Breakfast Club, which is a free Facebook group of mine. So I'm sure perhaps you're going to drop the link in there, James, or I can drop it in the comments.
Yeah, get the link and put it in the comments in the Facebook live stream for those who want to.
Yeah. So if you're, I mean, ultimately, if you're aspiring digital advertiser and you want to be taking control and ownership of your calls, and you're not in my free group, I've got to ask, why not? Let's take ownership of the things that we can as well, and as well as fulfillment, being able to serve these people. You know, that's really key, but we don't want to be the daddy long legs with all the tools to be able to bring someone down in the most poisonous venom in the world, but no teeth, right? If you can't sell it and you can't have a conversation, you feel like you're coming up against some barriers and you feel like you could use some guidance, get across to Sales Breakthrough Breakfast Club, and I'll be more than happy to help you. You'll be in good company as well, because we're all in the same boat.
Sound all good. Thank you very much for your time, Glenn. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Please do drop a comment if you're watching over on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe, like, and drop us a comment below. Let us know what your thoughts were on this video. Any questions, again, we will give you as much feedback as we possibly can on those, so feel free to ask. Thank you very much for joining, guys, and I'll see you on the next one. I'll announce it in the group. Peace out. Have a wicked day. Thank you very much, Glenn. Respect.
Peace
out,
man. Catch you on the inside.